Following the time-honored tradition of American Thanksgiving, I'm going to share some thoughts about the main thing that I'm grateful for this American Thanksgiving. Believe it or not, well, I guess it's really not that hard to believe under the circumstances. It's political. In a nutshell, I'm thankful for the American system of government and the checks and balances and dispersals of political power that are built into that system by design. Why? Because Donald Trump was elected president a few weeks ago. That's why. I grew up in Canada, where I'm currently residing right now. I can tell you, if the United States actually had a system of government comparable to what Canada has, or what Britain has, or what any number of other Western democracies have, as I've actually heard a lot of liberal commentators and policy wonks wishing over the past 8 years, imagine the position that the United States would be in right now if Donald Trump had the kind of power as President of the United States that, say, the Prime Minister of Canada has. Trump would be able to appoint members of the United States Senate, all 100 of them, unilaterally, all by his lonesome. No confirmations, no check, no balance. He would simply be able to appoint whoever he wanted to the U.S. Senate. Full stop. If a President Trump had the kind of power that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has, he would be able to punish any Republican member of the House of Representatives for voting in a way that he doesn't like on a pet piece of legislation that he supports by kicking that member of Congress out of the Republican Party altogether. It would thereby deny those elected representatives access to their party's funding for their re-election campaigns. Those representatives would then have to stand as independents in Congress, and they would have to take their chances with other non-party related sources of funding. Good luck with that. If a President Donald Trump had the kind of power that Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau has, President Trump would be able to appoint members of the Supreme Court without having to worry about Senate confirmations. Now I ask you, imagine if the executive and legislative branches in the United States government were fused together in the way that they are in all Westminster parliamentary democracies and parliamentary governments in general. In that context, a president of the United States could use the whole tradition in parliamentary government of maintaining the confidence of Parliament as an excuse to crack down on internal dissent within his party's own caucus in Congress, specifically in the House of Representatives, if we run with the Canadian comparison. In all, a lot more power would be concentrated in the president's hands. A lot of American scholars, quite rightly, have bemoaned the phenomenon of the imperial presidency in the United States. What all too often they overlook is how much worse it could be if the U.S. had a different country's system of government. Like my country's system of government, for example. So that's what I'm really thankful for this American Thanksgiving. That the founding fathers, and really more the framers of the U.S. Constitution, saw fit to erect a system of government in which power would be dispersed and no one branch could ride roughshod over the other branches too easily. One of the things that I addressed in my college senior thesis was the fact that although the tradition of confidence, the requirement that governments in British parliamentary systems maintain the confidence of Parliament, is supposed to help the legislature check executive power, in practice it's actually had the opposite effect, particularly in recent years and decades. The American system, by contrast, by separating the executive and legislative branches strictly, actually achieves the goal that parliamentary government is supposed to achieve. For all those liberals out there who spent the whole Obama presidency wishing that the president had more power and that majorities in both houses of Congress had more power to have their way based on up or down votes without pesky obstacles like the separation of powers in general or the Senate filibuster in particular to obstruct their agenda, I hope now you've come to your senses. I hope now you see how destructive it can be for too much power to be concentrated in the hands of any one individual or any one branch of government, particularly in a country as ideologically diverse as the United States. In countries like Canada, where there's much more of an ideological consensus in the country as a whole, or even more so in the Western European democracies, it's maybe not such a big deal to have a system in which the majority can override minorities that easily. But in a country like the United States, where there is still meaningful competition between left and right, people on both wings of the spectrum really ought to be grateful to have the system of government that their country has. I know it's frustrating when your party is in the majority that you're not able to get everything done that you'd like to get done. You may, as a lot of liberal commentators have done over the past 8 years, wish that power were more centralized, because there would be fewer obstacles in the path of your agenda, or it would be easier to bulldoze those obstacles out of the way. But what you keep forgetting, what folks on both wings of the spectrum in both parties keep forgetting, is that two can play at that game. When your party is inevitably out of power in the near future, because that's what tends to happen in American politics, the pendulum swings back and forth. When your party's out of power and the other guys are running the show, do you really want them to be able to wield the same power that you're demanding for yourself? Before advocating changes to the American system of government, before advocating a greater centralization of decision-making power, ask yourself what the other party would do with that same power. And thank your lucky stars that they won't have that power.